Greetings, X, Twitter. Wanted to come back live one more time. I tried earlier and didn't realize that audio was not working, so I'm redoing my live again. Call this an encore presentation. I wanted to take the opportunity to go live, and basically I wanted to revisit a topic that I touched upon recently. As you know, we just, not too long ago, we had the impeachment trial of Attorney General Ken Paxton here in the state of Texas. He was acquitted, and a lot of static has been given with respect to the outcome of the trial. And that is that people are saying that the trial was fixed. You have conservatives blaming the Speaker of the Texas House, Dade Phelan, for rushing the impeachment. You have people complaining that Dan Patrick was biased. And a lot of things that have occurred on both sides, but I think the more prominent of the two was the impeachment trial of Dan Patrick, and I'll say why. Because from the moment that I was watching this trial, a little bit that I was able to watch because I wanted to watch the entirety of it, and there was times that I had to actually watch the video rather than watch it live, which I did. But there was a lot of questionable moments that, and to me, made me think that maybe there was more to the story as far as the trial process and the outcome and all that. And people say, well, you're believing that it was a fix. The thing is, when I watched the trial, I picked up on these things as they occurred, and I did not make my conclusion, accordingly at the end of the trial. Is what I'm saying. So I mean, I could not tell you, okay, the trial was fixed. I mean, I did not make or draw my conclusion after seeing the entirety of the trial. That's what I'm saying. I mean, there were things like the statement that Dan Patrick made at the very beginning of the trial. He said this trial is going to be political. Now, ask yourself, what does Dan Patrick mean by that? Number one. Well, if you know what that question means, when you say don't be, it's going to be political, or you don't want to be political. Basically, it means that you're taking sides. Two, that it's going to be a battle or a war between parties. Basically, in this case, he's saying this is going to be a political trial because and you could infer saying because the conservatives are not going to allow the liberals to win in this scenario. That's basically the gist of hearing that, because anywhere you hear that statement nowadays, even on the national level, you're assuming, okay, yeah, it's a fight between the parties. The next thing that was questionable moment was the $1 million donation, the $2 million loan that was received by Dan Patrick. It's supposed to be a campaign loan from a organization that supported Ken Paxton. Now, I mean, Dan Patrick receives donations, but How coincidental and ironic was he received that specific donation at that time? It goes, I guess you can say, it goes back to the phrase or the cliche that both sides of the impeachment trial reiterated, and that was there's no coincidences in Austin. So this can or cannot be a coincidence, but it does make the trial. It makes it the lieutenant governor look suspect because of the timing. Of when this donation was made. The hearing and the motions that were made that Ken Paxton did not testify, the fact he did not show up, made it questionable. The fact that the other witness, the mistress, as they call her, she declined to testify, or she was not allowed to testify. A decision that most people said that was made by Dan Patrick. However, he let the lawyers decide how they were going to bring this before the Senate. Okay? So basically they're saying the ultimate decision on that was Dan Patrick. Excuse me. The vote itself, very consistent in that the same set of senators voted to acquit each and every time. That kind of makes it questionable because you're wondering, okay, did these particular senators go into this knowing full well what they were going to do? Did they have an agenda set, basically? Give me a minute. Sorry about that. My throat is going out here. So it's questionable, Well, now that the impeachment trial is over, the arguing is going across the aisles. People are criticizing Dan Patrick for being biased because he also gave a statement at the end of after the impeachment was over, where he was going off on the Texas House of Representatives, and those that were dead set against Paxton, which was, most people say, well, that should have been uncalled for. That shows his bias. That means that he was biased from the beginning. When you put that together with the statement that he made at the beginning of the impeachment trial, it makes more sense that he was biased than he was not. So you've got people criticizing the whistleblowers. You've got people saying, okay, and then today, this is where I wanted to get at, was that the whistleblowers themselves had a press conference, and basically they stood up for what they believe in, and they were like, okay, we gave our eyewitness testimony, and that is substantial evidence. So they were adamant that they were speaking the truth, and they pointed out some things that made ideally logical sense. And one thing is that Paxton has been silent this whole time. He was not even present for the entirety of the trial, only at the opening and the closing. But during the course of the entire trial, he did not show up. Now the question is, did he not show up because he knew what the outcome was going to be? Did he show up because he just did not care? What was his statement, or what was his motive for not showing up? Plain and simple. He's been silent this whole time. He has not defended himself. Makes you wonder because, if you think about it, normally when somebody, and this is the majority of the time, I'm not going to say it's each and every time, but the majority of the time is when somebody does not defend themselves and they're quiet and they're silent on on a situation, it's because more than likely they're hiding something. And what other premise can there be? He's hiding something, or he knew that he did something wrong. I mean, that's about as blunt and an ideological a reason for his silence. The whistleblowers did something interesting. They challenged Ken Paxton, and I want to play the video clip, and hopefully this time it will work. But I want to play the challenge that they issued, and the point they made was really valid if you think about it. So we're gonna cut to the video, and I'm gonna play this. I want you to hear exactly what they said. And this is the challenge that they made.
Amazing coincidence, isn't it? Will Ken Paxton come and do a press conference with all of you and with any other media members in Texas that want to ask questions, that want to look at the 4,000 pages of evidence that were filed on the Senate website by the House team? They worked hard all summer to gather all that evidence. Is Ken Paxton ever going to be pressed for answers about the facts in those records? There are extensive records about this. We stand behind our testimony. We challenge Ken Paxton to go in a neutral venue with media members who know what they're talking about, who study the documents, who can ask probing follow-up questions, instead of him going and just asking, going to friendly venues, getting softball questions, and not being pressed for details. That's what he does. We stand behind our testimony, and what we want is justice, and we want the people.
Well, there you have it. Basically, he's saying he's challenging Ken Paxton to go public before the media and to defend himself, to talk about the evidence that the 4,000 documents and 4,000 pieces of evidence that were brought against him. He's saying, and he's saying, okay, well, Paxton will only talk to certain news medias, those that basically they ask him the easy questions. In other words, basically the questions that he wants to answer, and not the questions that people want to know the answers to. I mean, and it makes sense, because it was even admitted in the impeachment trial that Paxton had a list of reporters that he avoided. And I think that is the general consensus for a lot of the conservative elected officials nowadays. I mean, if you really think about it, a lot of the conservative politicians favor Fox News, Newsmax, RNC, OANN, these overtly conservative news medias, but they do not want to speak to any other of the mainstream medias. Why is that? Because they know if they do, they're going to have to answer some hard questions, and they don't want to do that because they know that they're hiding something. They know that they've done something wrong, and they don't want to address it. They don't want to admit it. That's as blunt, I think, as we can get with it. So these whistleblowers, by challenging Ken Paxton, they want him to basically appear in a neutral venue. Doesn't have to be. I mean, it has to be somewhere neutral. They want some news media that has experience with dealing with all these documents and evidences that have been brought forth in the impeachment trial. They want that particular type of media representative to interview, to talk with Ken Paxton and ask him about this, and allow Ken Paxton to defend himself. That's what they want. Now, does Ken Paxton have the intestinal fortitude? Does he have the testicular fortitude, the cojones, the balls, to meet this challenge, to actually come before the media? Well, only Ken Paxton knows that. I would hope that Paxton would man up and meet this challenge because one, for him to come forward and address it would solidify his stance, because at least he would not be silent and hiding. I mean, if you want to come out ahead in a scenario like this, then you want to stand up and defend yourself, and you want to set the record straight. That's the ideal solution. Not to hide in the shadows, not to avoid the press, not to avoid the subject. You want to confront it, and you want to deal with it head on, because you want to set the record straight. Not many conservatives want to do that, apparently. I mean, they seek more to do damage in other areas than to confront the actual issues head on. Another example was when Ted Cruz, the freeze of 2021, the freeze, I think it was. The freeze that we had, February of 2021, I think it was. Ted Cruz, it just so happened that his daughters had a trip to Cancun. He went to go take them. Thing was, when the public found out about it, the press found out about it, they wanted to ask him about it, and he did not answer. He refused to approach the media about it. Why? Maybe his intention of going to Cancun was more than taking his daughters. We don't know. The fact of the matter is, Cruz did not address the media, and he did not set the record straight. The same thing has happened here with Ken Paxton. Ken Paxton has not set the record straight. He has not spoken publicly about these ordeals. And what's going to happen is, because the whistleblowers have said they're going to continue with the lawsuit. So what's going to happen is that they're going to continue with the lawsuit, and it's going to damage him. But on top of that, there is an FBI investigation. Now the fact that these witnesses testified under oath in the impeachment trial adds to the credibility, and it solidifies the testimony that they gave to the FBI. So that in itself solidifies the case a little bit more for the FBI if they should choose to indict. Now, if they don't do anything before this trial comes back to district court, and these whistleblowers testify in district court, their sworn testimony in the district court and the sworn testimony of the impeachment trial will even more solidify the case that these whistleblowers have. And it will be that much more difficult for Ken Paxton to be able to defend against that. So by not addressing the issue in the impeachment trial when he did, he is going to make it that much more difficult for him to win it in the courts, or to beat an indictment, if there is one, by the federal government. We'll just have to wait and see how that plays out. It's going to be, as I said, interesting to see if in the interim Ken Paxton has the cojones or the forte to answer this challenge. I think it's to his benefit if he does. And I would strongly encourage Attorney General Ken Paxton, if he's watching this, or if this comes across him, that he needs to take the time and he needs to actually deal with this challenge and answer it. Otherwise, he'll always have the asterisk over his head that maybe he was guilty, maybe there was something there. And he needs to eliminate that asterisk if at all possible. It's a matter of waiting and seeing what's going to happen, and if Attorney General Ken Paxton decides to respond to these whistleblowers, well, we'll visit that issue if we come to that bridge, I guess you could say. In the meantime, we'll wait to see if there's a response, and if there is, we'll deal with it. In the meantime, I'll bid you all a fond adieu. Have a good night, and we'll see you on the next live stream.